Oh, hey everyone, David here, good to see you again. And I have a Prezi to unwrap. Well, I say it's a Prezi. I've been buying from Temu again because the stocks were getting low, and no, this isn't paid content. They do have an awful lot of stuff which is really useful, and it's dead cheap. Thing is, I am not sure which of the packages this is because there isn't a manifest label on it. So it's potluck what we're going to be building today. Oh, they do wrap it pretty well. Just got to make sure I don't put the scissors through anything important. What have we got? Ah, right. Trees. More trees. Oh, ground cover moss. And artificial plants for the foliage set. Looks like we're doing woodland and stuff like that. Right, now here's a disclaimer. One thing you will never see me do on this channel is a tutorial on how to make trees. I bought one of those DIY kit set ones for making trees and started on them, almost lost the will to live, and I kid you not, it took me about 17 years to fully complete them. So now I just buy trees. It's a reasonable compromise of saving my sanity and you know, money versus time. These ones that came from Temu come in at around about $1 New Zealand each, which is what, 50 pence in UK money, about 75 cents in US. So it is well worth it. I am going to be supplementing them with these. So these ones are plastic from Temu, and these ones are a natural one. These are yarrow pieces. It's a plant and they've been dried out and flocking added to the top. So I'm going to be adding some of those into the mix as well, just to give a little bit of variety to our woodland. We'll use some of this as ground cover around the bases, plus some other stuff. So let's crack on. Now, you've probably noticed from the last clip that there was a couple of materials there that I didn't mention. I was going to use them as the basing material for the piece and it didn't work. It was a massive disaster. I've just made a video showing what not to do. So I am pivoting and I am going to go for something that is a little bit more reliable. This is sheet styrene. I will get this cut out and shaped, and we will be using this for the basing. This is what we'll carry on with. Okay, I've got the bases cut out and cleaned up around the edges. Come here, you. And I've also chamfered them slightly so that they'll, you know, look a bit happier when they're sitting down. Next stage, I'll just work on this small one for quickness sake. Just some fine grade sandpaper. Just roughen it up because we want stuff to adhere to it. Now, this is quite thin material, as you can see, and what I want to do is build it up in a couple of places. Reason I'm doing that, eventually I'm going to pop some holes in so that the trees will sit into it, but I want a good mechanical joint, so I want a reasonable size hole for, you know, the tree to be able to sit into, so it doesn't just get knocked off as soon as we move it. So for that, I am just going to use a bit of Superglue, and I am going to glue some counters down and just make it double height where I want those trees to sit. I'll get these done now. So while those bases are drying, I'm going to give these trees a little bit of attention. Now you can probably see they've used like a plastic flocking and it's quite glistening. So we want that dulled down and maybe just give it a wee bit of a highlight. So this is just old GW Goblin Green, and I am just doing a quick overbrush on the edges like that, just to sort of knock back a bit of that shininess and get a wee bit more in the way of colour variation. Shouldn't take us too long, so I will gnash on and get this painting part done. Okay, I've got the tiddlywinks attached and I've got holes drilled in so that they will receive the tree. Now what we need to do is put something just on the back side there so that, you know, glue will actually sit in the holder. And for that we are going to go for the good old tried and trusted reclaimed packaging material. And I don't want massive pieces. It's basically just going to be enough to cover the hole at the back. Okay, got some of those. Then turn that over. Bit of super glue around. Pop one of those on, and because it is nice thin material, it is not going to make the piece sit up proud at all. Okay, so yeah, that's sitting nice and flat. And now that we've got all of that ready, let us add some trees. Decent dab of super glue in the hole. Alright, I'll get on and get all the rest of these done. Right, one trick to mention, especially if you're using super glue on something that is maybe quite fragile, what I have done after filling the super glue, obviously a reasonable amount sort of came up around the edges, I've just sprinkled some baking soda, and that will soak up and add material to the join so that it's nice and strong. Not sure if you've seen me use that trick before. Right, time to fire up the hot glue gun. They are nice and secure. You can see there that baking soda and super glue has built up the base, you know, to a nice mechanical joint. But what we are now going to do is add a little bit of detail using hot glue around the base, because, you know, in an awful lot of cases where trees are going into the ground, you can see those really big exposed roots. So we're going to get a few of those just to make things look a little bit more interesting. And just starting at the side of the tree there, we're just going to draw a wavy line out with hot glue. Just in a couple of places. And of course that will also just add to the structural integrity of the model. I'll get on with doing all of these, and then it's going to be starting to paint up. So I'm happy with those exposed roots around the bottom, and I've got all of the inevitable hot glue stringy bits off. These are now going to be going for a coat of paint. Now, I am going to use spray. I'm going to do a grey undercoat and then a brown top coat, and I'll colour match the trunks and roots in just with normal paint. But, of course, we've already got this green lovely foliage that we don't want to get sprayed, so this is a sandwich bag, and we'll just pop that over the top like so. And of course, because it's got those fasteners at the end, you can just crimp them in to get it, you know, sitting nicely on there, and I should be able to do the bases of those without too much hassle. There you are, there's a tip for you. I always love it that once you get a uniform colour on, it starts looking like an actual model, and with that being brown, it's already kind of looking like terrain. But we do need to pretty it up a little bit. That colour, certainly around the trunks, is just a little bit too uniform and shiny because it was a gloss paint that I used, so I'm just going to knock it back a little bit with a dry brush with a lighter brown, and that'll just take some of that shine off it. Right, we're entering the final stretch now, and it is time to pretty up those bases a little bit. Now, we are only going to be doing a small amount of addition to them in terms of detail, because we do want them as flat as possible for playability, but we want to give the impression that there is more going on there than would be expected. So I am starting off just by super gluing a few stones on there for what would be, at our scale, large rocks, and I'm not going too overboard with it, just enough to break up that ground and make it look more full and not flat. it is time to start flocking. Now, this is a jar of dark mulch flocking that I made in the foliage ground scatter video. I'll leave a link up top. And I'm going to be using that first, and that is going to be going basically around the bases of the trees, because that would be in constant shade and you tend not to get a huge amount of growth there. And just for this part I'm going to be using neat PVA, and I'm going to make sure that I don't necessarily go all the way over those roots, because we do want those exposed roots well exposed. But if you do go over a little bit, that's fine. And just take it round the edges. If you imagine a line straight down where that's the canopy, you don't want to go too far out past it if you can avoid it. In fact, you want to be in a little bit from there, otherwise it may end up looking a little bit silly. And then get a decent covering on there. And I'll leave that to dry and shake off the excess. Right, we are entering the final furlong, as they say. Now, one thing to note, the coarse texture of that mulch ground effect stuff that we did has very nicely covered over that sort of lip where the tiddlywink was attached to it, so you can't tell it was there, and that's exactly what we were after. So, now that all of the mulch is on, we want to go with the actual grass. And instead of neat PVA, this is our bog standard watered down PVA with detergent. Again, just make sure that you get a decent bit around the lip. And the really good part about the fact that we've already got some of it covered in flocking means that you've got a place to put your thumb while you rotate it. Make sure that you get it all the way up to the edge. Doesn't matter if you overlap a little bit. That is all perfectly fine, because you want it blended in any case. And when you're doing things like going up against those rocks, just remember that chances are they've been there for a while, so there is absolutely no problem whatsoever with just, you know, taking the glue a little bit up the sides to show that it's starting to get overgrown. And now that the glue's on there, let's get a decent amount of flocking. And again, just make sure that you get it all the way on those edges, because we do want that completely covered. Right, that can dry while I get on with the other ones. Well, with that grass cover on, I would say these are certainly ready to be gracing the gaming table. But of course, it wasn't just the trees that we got in our Temu haul. There was all of this moss as well. So I see absolutely no reason why we can't add just a wee bit more detail to that base, just to break it up a little bit. Not a huge amount, but we just want the odd little bit, and I'm just going to use straight PVA. In fact, I'll use tweezers on this and just add a wee bit more detail around there. And there's loads and loads of different colours of moss to choose from, but I'm not going to be using the purple one. And that, my friends, is the fast and dirty method of doing woodland scatter. Got to be said, the stuff from Temu, while not necessarily museum quality, is certainly good enough for our purposes, or my purposes I should say, and the cost certainly agrees with me as well. One thing about just the staging of the photos, I noticed that, well, really I didn't manage to get to set the trees off to their full glory. So I think the next one I'm going to have to do is paint up a miniature that I can set in with these, just to make them shine a little bit better, and I know the very chap for that. So if you want to see what I've got next, please do hit the like and subscribe button, get notifications, share the video if you want. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye for now.